Hey everyone, so recently we've been looking at how factored polynomials reveals the roots, the zeros to us, and a lot more about the graph, so multiplicities and then behavior and whatnot. So the issue with that is not every equation is going to be in factored form. So then how exactly do we sketch it in that case? So we're going to be looking into methods and tools that we can use for that. One of those being long division with polynomials. And leading into that, let's look at just a basic division of two numbers. So 3,587 and dividing that by 32. Before we get into doing this, we would call, in this situation, 3,587, we would call this the dividend. It's probably a word you did not know or you were told at one time and forgot. We have the dividend, and we divide the dividend by what's called the divisor. So, let's divide. So we have the divisor and our dividend. And we do this by looking at, or thinking of, how many times can 32 go into 35? Well, we would say once. We would multiply 32 by 1. And we think of taking 32 away from what's above it. So that would leave us with 3. And we would know that 38 drops down. So then we think again, 32 now goes into 38 once. Multiply, this is 32. Again, we subtract, giving us 6. Our 7 drops down. Again, 32 can go into 67 twice. Multiplying 2 by 32 gives us 64. And we have 3 at the end. And typically you go on and on, you put more zeros here and have a decimal. But we want to know that this 3 is called the remainder. So we have the dividend, we have the divisor, we have our remainder, and our result, what we would say is our result is, we call this the quotient. And what we can do with these four values is we can write what's called an algorithm, or the summary of an algorithm. So how we would do this is, say, 3,587 equals our divisor multiplied by the quotient, and we have a remainder of 3. So, again, we have the dividend, we have the divisor, and we have quotient and remainder. So I'm going to use some letters here instead of numbers. So we have, let's say f of x is our dividend. That's the function that we have. And we're dividing that function by another function. So this would be our divisor. What we see is when we divide our polynomial by another function, we'll get a polynomial as a result. And then we'll get, in some cases, a remainder. Now this remainder could be a constant, it could be a function as well. But this remainder we have. So we call this the division algorithm. This is what we would call the division algorithm. It's also written as our dividend, our main function, equals the quotient multiplied by the divisor. And we have to add a remainder to that. Again, not always, but in some cases. Okay, so we're going with this, and let's see how this can be applied. All of this can be applied to actual functions with variables. So let's examine this function. So we're getting long division with polynomials. Let's say we have the functions 3x cubed plus 5x squared plus 8x plus 7. Okay, very first thing, well, first of all we have to know what we were dividing by. Let's divide by 3x plus 2. Okay, very first thing that we have to recognize and have to think about. Before we start dividing, the powers have to be in descending order. So the powers have to be in descending order. They have to be. So we look at that. They are. So we have 3x plus 2. That is our divisor. And we have our dividend of 3x cubed plus 5x squared plus 8x plus 7. Okay. Now this might look like a monster to you, but we're going to break this down and see how we go about dividing these two functions. So we have all of this. You only need to focus on the leading term in your divisor and the leading term in your dividend. And what we have to think is, what do I have to multiply 3x by to have 3x cubed? So you would think we have to multiply that by x squared. So we do that. We multiply by x squared. We get 3x cubed and then 2x squared. So we saw in the first example that we always subtract these. So we do subtract, group it and subtract. So we get 3x cubed minus 3x cubed. They do cancel. 5 minus 2 gives us 3x squared. And like before, the next term drops down, and we just simply repeat. So using a different color, we look at 3x and we look at 3x squared. So we would say 3x needs to be multiplied by an x to get 3x squared. So we do that. And then x multiplied by 2 gives us 2x. So we subtract, cancel, 8 minus 2 will be 6x. And we drop the next term and repeat what looks like it's going to be the last time. So 3x and 6x, we don't need any more variables, we just have to multiply by 2. So 3x times 2 is 6x, and 2 times 2 is 4. Again, subtract. Our 6x's cancel, and 7 minus 4 is 3. But because we cannot multiply 3x by anything and get just 3, we are done. So 3 would be our remainder. So as a result, we can write 3x cubed plus 5x squared plus 8x plus 7. When we divide it by 3x plus 2, we can say that it equals x squared plus x plus 2 plus a remainder of 3 out of our divisor. So this would be what we consider as to be a result. Okay? So let's try another. Let's try dividing 6x cubed minus 19x squared plus 16x minus 4. And let's divide this by the equation x minus 2. So let's see what we get. So we have our divisor, our dividend, okay. So you can pause the video at this point and try this yourself. You can post questions in the comments below. Let's work this through. So x, we focus on x, and we focus on the leading term. So to get 6x cubed, we're going to have to multiply x by 6x squared. So we do that. gives us 6x cubed, and then minus 12x squared. We love all these negatives. So 6 minus 6, we know that cancels. Negative 19, subtract a negative, so we know this becomes addition. So we get negative 7x squared as a result. The next term drops down, it's 16x. Only focusing on the first, x, to get negative 7x squared. We multiply by negative 7x. So you multiply through negative 7x squared, positive 14x. We subtract. This might be, subtracting might be the one thing that we forget. So each time we go through here, we have to subtract our group. So our 7's cancel. 16 minus 14 is 2x. We drop our negative 4. And this should be our last step. X, to get 2x, we have to multiply by positive 2. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. And if you notice, when we subtract this, we do get a remainder of 0. Now, you don't know why I'm a little excited here, but we're going to look more into this. So what can be said about the remainder, or even the divisor, when the remainder is 0? Or when the remainder is not 0. What can be said about our situation? So that's where we're going to continue with our next video.